This week on the Nonprofit News Feed, my name is George Weiner. I'm the chief whaler of Whole Whale. We are an analytics agency, advertising, helping nonprofits, doing all of those things, but also a huge nonprofit geek interested in what's going on in the news. I also have Nick Azulay, digital strategist at Whole Whale. Little aside, this week I'm going to the Social Innovation Summit over in San Francisco. Looking forward to running into other nonprofits, foundations, and past clients that are there. So, a lot on the plate this week. Nick, how's it going?
It's going great, George. Good to see you as always. Have fun at your conference. We wanted to start us off with our first story, and that is an interesting survey that was conducted and written up by the folks over at CNN. And that is that companies are retreating from public support of Pride. Of course, June, we are now in. Is Pride Month. And we have this new poll of corporate leaders that found that 39% of companies plan to scale back visible Pride Month activities, including sponsorships, social media posts, as well as typically rainbow themed merchandise, primarily due to pressure from the Trump administration and fears of a conservative backlash. George, companies have faced backlash in the past, particularly homophobic and transphobic backlash. Bud Light was the target of a boycott that didn't seem to make very much sense. George, we wanted to kind of put this into the context. We've been doing a series, if you will, a lot of stories about how corporations kind of swoop into social movements and discussions about social impact and start kind of making bold claims. They either co-opt that movement or they attempt to shift blame in other ways. And I think, George, we want to talk about this story first, but then we're going to transition into a little bit of a talk of rainbow washing and how corporations in many ways co-opted the LGBTQ rights movement. So, George, what are your thoughts about this story at the top?
When it rains, the paint comes off. It's pretty clear. When there's any manner of adversity, when there's any pushback that might make it a touch uncomfortable to be an ally, to be supportive, and a little bit of rain comes down, that rainbow paint they washed everything in washes off. I think we're seeing it now pretty clearly. Also, the other part of me is like laughing that, you're damned if you do, damned if you do for these organizations. You're like, you're marketing and supporting, but you're only doing it to sell products. And then you're like, you're not using it and marketing it to sell products. So I imagine there's folks that can easily say, well, which is it? You annoying folks. And you're like, there's ways of doing it in supportive ways. There are clearly, when you're looking at, a number like 39% of major corporations scaling back, you're going to see fewer ads, fewer conversations about it, and less celebration. And I think it is reflective of the environment of oppression, clearly waged by the current administration on progressive movements, including not limited to LGBTQ plus communities.
Yeah, George, I think that's exactly right. And the folks over at the Toda Peace Institute are some of the many people thinking about kind of technology and social movements and social impact. And Jody Wetzel writes, I think, really eloquently in a brief about rainbow washing, which is the phrase specifically designed to talk about the use of branded LGBTQ merchandise by corporations to show support of and or profit from the movement, depending on who you're talking to. But I think it's really interesting, George, because she does a really good, I think, pretty nuanced breakdown of the ways that corporations can either help or harm a movement. And on the help side, you have the normalization, the representation in media and advertisement, the exposure for a cause, elevating LGBTQ plus voices, right? Oftentimes companies might use platforms to elevate creators or artists, etc., voices in the movement. And they might encourage donations, right? Or profit sharing. They might give back. They might support organizations like the Trevor Project, etc. And those are all good things. But on the flip side of that, on the more cynical side, of course, you do have the superficial representation or signaling, right? So you have the critiques of performative activism, the slacktivism critique, the hashtag activism critique, right? Where it's like, okay, they're doing this, but it's the real bare minimum. Is there anything substantive there? Also, rainbow marketing and pandering. performative activism for a profit, right? Companies profit off of pride. I'm in New York City, and the Pride Parade is awesome, but it's also kind of disconcerting because it's like a lot of corporations with floats, and there's a performative aspect to that. And then, of course, the dilution, right? The oversaturation, the splitting of attention, and then the co-optation, right? George, you and I are both New Yorkers. I'm sure we've both walked down Christopher Street many times, right? When corporations come in, they kind of take and can redefine and co opt a movement. And I think there's a lot of danger in that. And I think we're seeing the ramifications of that here, in which corporations are backing away from public displays of support during Pride Month just because of a change in the administration. So just wanted to highlight this, not always the easiest or most happy thing to talk about, but I think we need to be aware of these dynamics as they're happening, especially as we continue throughout this year.
Yeah, and what I liked about this article at least is the data, like measurable. This isn't like I feel like things are no, 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 no. They came in looking at the fact that 39% of major corporations, they looked at major organizations like Target, like Kohl's, like Macy's, like Nordstrom, the folks that had previously been putting things out there, Bud Light, as you mentioned before, and just being like, this is where it was and this is where it is. So this isn't a subjective like, oh, look at what it feels like. No, no, there's less investment, less attention, and I think the cause is pretty clear.
Yeah. Well said, George. All right, I'll take us into our next one. And this is a story from TechCrunch. And George, I'm going to let you kind of run with this, but we got a little bit of a memoir of sorts from a Doge volunteer that I think is pretty telling. What stuck out to you about this?
So help me on the pronunciation. Sahel Lavingia, I think we decided, founder of Gumhill, basically, you know, tech entrepreneur brought into Doge. And this was like a quiet story released, but it was out there as a like his 55-day experience of working with Doge. And in this, he talks about how he wanted to come in, help veteran affairs, help make things more efficient. And I think there's a lot of folks coming in with that truly like, I want to help the government. I want to bring tech here, which is fine as an intention. But in terms of application, as he was fired, he noted that, as he started to raise issues that he was finding, he did like one conversation with Fast Company was immediately terminated. But he noted that he wanted to come in and improve things like UX for VA and improve the implementation of tech to help processes inside of it, like that. But instead was literally asked to build a technical tool that could scan PDFs for DEI, gender identity, COVID policies, climate initiatives. So build something that was essentially a language thought police type filter that could then be applied to the vast amounts of PDFs and documents inside the organization. That doesn't sound like efficiency to me. That sounds like a tool for filtering out people that might disagree politically with something that has nothing to do with efficiency, that has nothing to do with savings, it has nothing to do with fraud. That is how you build a tool that ideologically finds and removes the people who disagree with you. And I know this because I built the same exact tool, but I built it for good when I put together the inclusivity tool. We had this running for, 5 years ago at least. I don't, I can look back and see on our site, but we had a tool that was essentially taking PDFs, taking, pages of your site and help you find non-inclusive language. So the exact inverse of this, help identify it. And then I'd help you see why it was maybe where it was, frankly, on the spectrum of potentially offensive or problematic for particular audiences, how you use it. It would comb through those things and bring that back to you. And it was very helpful. We had entire website audits which you go through. So these tools are incredible at finding that sort of like, hey, here are words, phrases, and points of ideological confusion that you may want to resolve. Used in the inverse, it is unfortunately a very powerful tool for finding and identifying enemies of your political belief. And this is what Doge literally built. That's the engineer. That's the thing he built. Then it was used to do some of this targeting. So I feel like it is a complete justification of this. Like, it feels like this is a tour of retribution and not something that's about cost cutting. It feels like it's no longer, it feels like this is literally what was built. That was the human who was asked to do it instead of things that were maybe making things more efficient. And that's how it was implemented. It's like paint by number right there, but it was like so hard, and it's so hard to find like these like real stories intermixed with a lot of the noise. And just frankly, like I was like, holy cow, I know exactly what that tech is. I built it, I used it, I help folks with it. And the inverse of it is very, very dangerous in how it was applied. And I think it just sort of it got washed over. And I just wanted to call it up, call it out as like this is paint by number, a pure explanation of how Doge is being used as a tool of retribution against progressive nonprofits as well as thought.
Yeah, George, I think that's exactly true. And I think in kind of a related story, we found out over the weekend that Peter Thiel backed tech company Palantir has been given an expanded role in the government and is beginning to compile profiles, merging data between agencies of individuals across Health and Human Services, Department of Homeland Security, potentially IRS systems, in creating some kind of dystopian panopticon of information that might be able to, instead of just looking internally at the government, now look externally at the people it serves. So we got to keep an eye on this.
Yeah, and to that end, because we were and I built the inclusivity tool, which we've since sunset for different reasons, and it lives but in a different way and a more proprietary solution. We have the inverse of that that can help you identify words that they will come after you for and help you with rephrasing, especially if you need to like audit an entire site and things like that. Obviously, it's to the judgment of your board, of your strategy, where you live, where you depend on grants and things like that. But frankly, we were like, well, wait a minute, if they're using this type of tech to find and identify you, how do you personally go through and be like, all right, what is our like digital risk with regard to the types of words that they are scanning for, which is emotionally exhausting, to be honest. But I am even more exhausted by the fact or the thought that there might be some staff or staff members like assigned to trying to do this by hand. And I'm like, if ever a moment for AI and automation, like finding a graceful solution for how we communicate about the communities we care about and support, if it meant continued funding or not showing up on a flag, like these are decisions that have to be made. So if that work is being done, it might as well be done by, have AI fight AI.
Yeah. Uh, no intern should be burdened with that task. Saving interns everywhere, huh? All right, I'll take us into our next story, George. Speaking of AI, just this morning, the Wall Street Journal announced that, or reported rather, that Meta aims to use AI to automate its entire advertising infrastructure by 2026. So, full AI ad automation is coming, and Meta plans to let brands provide just a product image and a budget, and AI will do the rest. They'll write the text. They might produce a video. They might handle targeting across the platform, and you might now, George, get surveillance capitalism up to the wazoo. Real time AI ad personalization, which the AI will show different versions of the same product and ad to different people, creating highly unique, personalized advertising experiences. George, Meta's AI push caused its stock to rise 1% this morning. Investors seem happy. What does this mean for nonprofits, particularly nonprofits that do paid ads on Facebook and elsewhere?
I think there's a lot of second order impacts from this, a lot of thoughts, and then like won't be by any stretch the last time we talk about it. And there are already like click this button for AI to do this for you types of solutions inside of Facebook, inside of other ad platforms that we see increasing because what they're trying to do is reduce the friction of you giving them money for the attention of a given audience with your message. At a high level, I am one hopeful that these types of communication efficiencies will help nonprofits reach more potential donors and get their message out in efficient ways. But the truth is, there is no world in which, if I was at a nonprofit that had any manner of controversial or controversial adjacent or complex issue framing or communication, that I would let AI render a video, put some music on it, and let it go talking about my brand. And if you just want to see what that might look like, just go on and ask AI to just like generate ads for your thing, and then just say like, what if I just press publish on all of this without a human in the loop? I'm going to say those words again. Just press publish verbatim on what you get without a human in the loop. We're talking about potentially the removal of a human in the loop for putting out at scale messaging about your organization on controversial topics, whatever they may be, nuanced issues to a wide audience, but that you pay for, and also pay for the fact that when, not if, when one of those ads, frankly, speaks incorrectly about a topic or does it insensitively, that's getting screenshotted and it's getting plastered on every
Oh,
single
yeah.
news outlet that will have it. And if you don't believe me, like literally just look through today's news in terms of AI fails and like you don't want to be there. So my recommendation is understand it, play with it, but don't be the first penguin in the water. Don't be the second penguin in the water because sharks are smart and they'll wait for the second penguin to come in and eat that one. Be very careful with just let AI do this button. The other second order effect that I see is this is going to potentially be devastating to agencies. Frankly, agencies even like Whole Whale that help organizations run strategic ads, analytics, and thinking around that and how you reach and why you reach those people. It's just the truth of the matter is it's going to be downward pressure on the entire consulting industry, and I've seen this in other consulting and AI overlaps. That there's some tough headwinds coming. Some are good, some are not good.
George, I wonder, maybe a little more philosophically, there's a lot of AI slop on social media, and it seems to be increasing month over month. Do we run the risk of kind of just destroying social media as an e-commerce site as people kind of more and more are wary of AI, aware of it? They find the quality of these ads useless. Go on Twitter, it's filled with spammy ads for like drop shipping websites, and even other platforms also, like TikTok is replete with just low trustworthy garbage ads. Do you think this will cause kind of like systemic damage to the ad industry?
I just love your thought that like it was so pristine and beautiful before that like, oh no, we're gonna ruin this. I'm looking out on a landfill and being like, what exactly are we ruining? I think there was periods of like a golden age in terms of for advertisers at least, the amount of data that you were able to target, use, and abuse was like peak, probably like 5 years ago, 4 years ago. And then, as we had tighter cookie controls and constraints actually happen and protect people's data, that was in the right direction. By no means do I think we are, it's hard to ruin a landfill, I will say, with regard to that. In terms of the legitimate concern that like actual signal to noise of things that you want out there as a message of an organization, absolutely. Like the ability for just one person properly motivated with AI tools to flood the zone, put out incredible amounts of content that are irrelevant, at worst confusing or misleading, is certainly something that has to be dealt with. And the pendulum's going to swing, and this is going to be definite AI slop summer where it's getting pushed out more and more. The pattern recognition that people are getting for, wait a minute, this was AI generated, tightening. People can smell it a lot more, certainly in AI images and in AI videos, still very much. Like it is immediately seen. People get angry at me when I put out like AI videos on LinkedIn, even though I'm literally doing it as a point of like, look, it's not there. Isn't this weird? And people are like, look at this. They try to yell at me for putting out AI content. I was like, that was the point. Whatever. TLDR, I spend way too much time on LinkedIn, I think. But there, on the advertising front, and this is where I'm paying attention. AI mode and how, in terms of Google, those ads are now showing up alongside or within AI generated results are very, very, very interesting to me right now. That is where I'm paying the most attention to how the AI landscape is meeting the ad targeting world. And I'm also very interested in how LinkedIn data is getting pushed back out into the Microsoft ad network. I think there's a whole lot more that Google's going to be able to do with targeting better around demographics because of the amount of information that you inherently share when you start combining all of your personal data into a tool like Gemini, into their AI ecosystem. It's not
Right.
just the like moment of what someone's looking for, it's who that person is and what that person is thinking in that moment, a lot more intimately. So I think targeting and the ability to do so for those that know how to use these tools is going to be better than it has ever been.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's worthwhile remembering that Meta and Google have data on almost every website.
They
They're
do.
installed on the website.
We've installed. I have literally installed those. They're living on my site because I get analytics for free, right?
Right, right. So never underestimate the quantity of data that these guys have. All right, George. I wish I had a feel good story. I don't. Anything fun happening out there on the great Pacific Coast?
Yeah, I'd say this social innovation summit, just coming back to it, is exciting. There's a huge list of nonprofits and foundations coming together to talk about what we do moving forward with AI inclusion and supports. I am definitely we'll let you know what I found most interesting about the conversations going on there.
Fantastic. Okay, George, I got a joke. I'm going to cut it for you. I told Claude very quickly, tell me the funniest joke of all time. And Claude responded, a man walks into a library and asks for books on paranoia. The librarian whispers, they're right behind you. All right. Maybe that's a good panopticon, little Foucault state surveillance tie-in right there. All right, George, I'll let you go. We'll cut that.
Thanks, Nick. It was great.
See ya.